Welcome to this special bonus episode of the Passive House Podcast. I'm Zach Semke, Director of Passive House Accelerator, and we're pleased to be sharing a series of bonus episodes recorded at PhiusCon 2022 in Chicago. These interviews were made possible by generous support from Corp and Zola Windows. In this interview, Passive House Podcast co-host Matthew Cutler-Welsh speaks with John Woelfling of Dattner Architects. Enjoy.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate your time and your presentation at the Phius conference. Let's go back a little bit and talk about how you got into architecture. What inspired you?
That's actually a funny question. So when I grew up, like many people in North America, we had these Dr. Seuss books.
Yeah.
And I had a Dr. Seuss book that was called My Big Book About Me.
Yeah.
And you'd count the doors in your house, you'd count the windows, you'd count the forks, you'd count the knives.
Nice.
And you'd also say what you want to be when you grow up.
Uh-huh.
So I had initially put in architect, and I spelt it wrong. I think I had a K in there.
Yeah.
And then I scratched it out and I put plumber.
Huh.
But I've always had this interest in how things go together.
Yeah.
And understanding the dynamics of things. So that's really what kind of led me to, I think, trying to build these things. I've always really enjoyed making things.
Yeah.
And granted, as an architect, you're not actually making the building, you're putting together the design, but you really have to think about how the thing comes together in order to design it well.
Yep.
So, since I was 5 years old, I've been kind of thinking about that. And it really, some people said, hey, you're good at art, you like math, you should become an architect. I'm not sure how much that influenced me, but I think I landed in the right place for me.
Right. And so was there any influence in the family? No builders or...
Yeah, my grandfather was a contractor. My dad, always, whatever house we moved into, he was, he would convert a garage into our living room.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was always a project going on.
Yeah.
The house that my wife and I bought in Brooklyn a couple of years, well, it's actually 20 years ago. The first 3 years we spent renovating it on the weekends and the evenings.
Yeah.
But, I've got the scars to prove it. And, so that was a real great learning experience. Looking back on it, I wish I would have done a lot more insulation in the house.
Right.
But it's hard
20
to...
years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
Learned a lot in 20 years. Yep. Interesting you mentioned about plumbers.
Mm-hmm.
I often think that plumbers and electricians and... they're right up there with structural engineers. They can have a lot of influence on the performance of a building.
Absolutely, yeah. Also on what kind of space you end up with.
Yeah.
If you've got a plumbing engineer that doesn't really think about where that piping's going to go or the run out of it, you could lose ceiling height. That's one of the things that when I'm reviewing drawings, when I'm looking at the trades, the disciplines that work with me, the plumber, the mechanical engineer, I always look for those things. I look for those tight spots in the building, the ground floor where the services come out, where they go into the riser, and look for those really tight spots and make sure that they're well coordinated between all the trades.
Because that's where things can go wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell us about your practice.
So my firm, Dattner Architects, we are a mid-sized firm based in New York City. Mm-hmm. We've been in business for close to 60 years. The founding principal, Richard Dattner, is still practicing. He comes in and, he does his thing.
Yeah.
And he's been, a great guiding force in the firm for that entire time. Our firm is grounded in doing civic architecture that is making a difference in the public realm. We do not only subway stations, infrastructure for the Department of Sanitation in New York City. Mm-hmm. We do multifamily residential, affordable, supportive, senior, market rates. We do libraries, we do schools. So one of the things that I think makes me and my staff, the people that I enjoy working with every day, one of the things that motivates all of us at the firm is this difference that we get to make in our community. We get to build buildings in our city. We get to make a difference, make better buildings for the residents, make affordable buildings so that we have a good mix of income levels, a dynamic city. So that's one of the things that really, I'm very proud of. I'm really, pleased to be able to work with motivated, inspiring people at my office. Yeah. So it's really, it's a joy to be able to get into the office every day.
How does it feel when you drive past a building?
My kids are sick and tired of hearing about it. Well, I'll drive through Brooklyn and I'll say, that was a project we did a couple of years ago. They're still waiting on trying to get the grocery store in there. And they're just like, oh, Dad, enough. All right, we've heard it already. Yeah. But to me, it is a great source of pride that I get to, drive by. And I'm not the only one who, as an architect, we often get a lot more credit than I think we deserve for building a building. We draw it. We do one piece of it. Sure, we collect all the disciplines. We make sure it's all coordinated. But, there's thousands of people that are responsible for building a building.
Yeah.
But I do get to take a great deal of pride in that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it must change the way that you look at buildings as just being kind of anonymous big chunks of materials to versus something you've had a sense of ownership of.
Yeah, exactly. And I also, I learn lots of lessons, not only from my own work, but going around the city and seeing things that, I know why that was done. They didn't think about how the sleeve of the HVAC unit is going to interface with the wall. So I see mistakes that other architects have made and learn from that. And I think it's just, being aware of your surroundings. And I think also, like I said earlier about taking pride in that change that you can make in your city. The firm, myself personally, we take such a great deal of pride in making good buildings in our city, making our city better.
What does that mean? How do you know when a building is good?
I think when it's a couple things. I just had a ribbon cutting that I went to a couple days ago.
Nice.
And it's a project in East New York, Brooklyn. It's a 14-story building. And when one of the residents shows up with her child, who's going to be able to stay in the neighborhood and bring her child up in that neighborhood in a healthy building, it's a passive house building. The fact that I've created a place for her to live, her son to live in that neighborhood that she calls home, that to me is one measure of success. Another measure of success is when we first started building that building, there were abandoned cars on the streets. It was a real gritty neighborhood. I don't see the abandoned cars anymore because there has been this significant investment, and this investment that not only includes 275 apartments, but also a community center that is a community-based organization it's a not-for-profit. They're doing good work. They're actually helping asylum seekers that are coming into the city from Texas and helping them relocate and get acclimated and situated in the city. So they're doing this phenomenal work in the city. So I'm talking not necessarily about the architecture, but what about how it can help create a community. One of the hallmarks of our projects that are affordable, and often all affordable, like 100% affordable, is that they don't look like affordable housing buildings. I think that's an architectural response to your question. So there are a lot of architects out there that don't necessarily think about scale, think about material, think about the public or the pedestrian experience on the sidewalk, and I think that's where some of these buildings really fall down. I mean, not fall down, but they fall short.
Right.
And I like to think that our buildings aspire to be better than that. Yeah. That there is this thought about scale, this thought about program, this thought about community, and we push the envelope in multiple ways.
That result of having a family, or parents feeling comfortable, safe, that sense of pride, can you put that into a project brief? How do you define that at design stage or even before the design starts? We're in the fortunate situation of being able to focus on these all affordable projects quite frequently. Mm-hmm. So
it's almost like a given that like doing something that's fundamentally good. I don't know if that's answering your question or not, but it's a lot of our work comes through.
I guess the question is how to make that repeatable, because it's great to have that experience that you know you've done something amazing and life-changing for someone. But okay, you want to do that again. How do you write that down as a brief for the next project to make that happen again?
Okay, now I get it. Well, I think it's a combination of things. One is that we work with a great number of not-for-profit clients that understand the value of providing that. I mean, it's part of their mission. Part of their mission is to provide affordable housing, and not just like superficially affordable, like really deep affordable housing within these communities that actually matches with the income that's in the neighborhoods. Another thing that we do is we've learned from our past buildings things like putting the laundry room in a place where you've got daylight. Don't put it in the cellar.
Right.
Put it on the ground floor.
Yeah.
Connect it to an outdoor space so that if someone's doing their laundry, they can send their kids out. The kids can play in the outdoor area. So a lot of it is about making smart choices about where some of those amenities go. How are people going to actually live in this building? How are they going to experience it?
Yeah.
So I think that's the sort of thing that it's common sense, but maybe there's some choices that like if you put that laundry room in the cellar, in the basement. Maybe you could put one more apartment in there, where you might want to put that laundry room for better functionality and better resident life. Yeah. But you've got to make that choice. You've got to help that client understand that this is going to benefit the residents by having them have a more pleasant place to do something very mundane, such as their laundry.
That reminds me of an apartment project in Auckland that I heard about recently, where the shared laundry space was in a room that had a rooftop garden and also had a coffee machine, and ended up being the place where most people would hang out together during the lockdown because they could go and enjoy the sun, have a coffee, and chat to each other while they were doing the laundry. Instead of being a dark, dingy place where you just wouldn't want to go.
That's exactly. Maybe on our next project we should put a coffee machine in there. We haven't done that yet, but we should look at that.
But that's a great example of a specific learning that changes the design to make it more usable for the community and creates a sense of community by virtue of the design. When you say affordable, what's your definition?
So, yes. I'm going to get a little wonky here.
Yeah.
In New York City, actually New York State, there's a program that just expired called 421A. And it was a program that allowed developers to build buildings and not have to pay property taxes. And it was a huge draw away of the potential tax coffers, the tax revenue from the city. I think on the order of like $1.7 billion a year. Yeah. I mean, it's like 2% of what could potentially be collected. Yeah. But it did help build, and I'm using air quotes now, affordable housing. And that affordability went up to 130% of AMI. AMI is area median income, and it is a little bit of an abstract number, but area median income in New York City is actually New York City, it's Westchester, which is a very affluent area, it's Long Island, another very pockets of really high affluence.
Yeah.
So the AMI that ties into this 421A program is a little bit skewed.
Yeah.
And some people call that affordable. It is affordable. It's kind of it's a middle income band of affordable. It does satisfy, I think, some of the demand that's in New York City. That program actually expired.
But if you've got some exceptionally wealthy people within that region, it pushes that up.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. So affordable is kind of in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
So for a 421A program or project, that affordability is actually that doesn't really fall in my definition of affordable. Mm-hmm. Affordable is something that is 60%, 80%, 40%, even 20% of that AMI. And that AMI for New York City is this large catchment area that includes a lot of very affluent areas. So I think to really target a neighborhood's appropriate AMI, you have to go down sometimes to that 60, that 40, that 20.
Right.
In the East New York project that I was talking about, comparing the AMI for that neighborhood to Westchester County is just, it's like apples and oranges. It doesn't make any sense. So you have to really go deep into that AMI, those lower bands, to really approximate and replicate the affordability that's needed for that neighborhood. So that's a long way of saying I think the affordability really needs to match the neighborhood that you're building in so that you're not displacing, you're not causing gentrification.
Yeah, because that would be a big concern for those the more wealthy people.
Right.
They don't want slums and they don't want bad-looking buildings.
I do think that there is a real compelling argument to having income diversity within a building.
Right.
Don't just make it all the 20% AMIs. Have a good mix. And you can blend 20%, 60, 80, 130. You can bring all those people together. It actually, I think, makes for a more stable community to have that diversity of income.
So particularly if you're making a building not look like an affordable building.
Exactly, yeah. So you can afford the higher rent. You can have those higher rent apartments help pay for the lower rent apartments and kind of blend that all together and make a building that's still either achieving high performance for carbon reduction, has nicer finishes.
When did you first hear about Passive House?
It was about 7 years ago.
Right.
And it was the 425 Grand Concourse project. Christoph, my client and friend, who's also an architect, came to us and this site was a city-owned site. The site that 425 is located on is was a city-owned site, and they put it up through a competitive RFP process, request for proposals.
Yeah.
They put it out for the development community to make proposals on how to build on this site to maximize the affordable housing, make a really great program. And Christoph came to my firm, me, and said, we want to do a passive house project. And so it was really the first time that I had heard about this. I became a quick study at it, learned a lot in a very short period of time, and then we were fortunate enough to get the project. Then I had to really to understand the details of it. So, it was about 7 years ago that I first learned about it. I've been coming to these conferences since. So they're a great way to. I've learned a great deal today just walking around the vendor booths.
Yeah. And so on that project, have you ended, because you're busy, running a team.
Yep.
Are you on the tools? Are you on doing the Passive House stuff yourself, or you got other associates?
I have a whole host of really talented, skilled people that are working with me.
Right.
I'm a certified Passive House tradesperson. I took the 3-day training. I got my hands all sticky with the tape. And maybe that speaks a little bit to my upbringing. Yeah, exactly. I want to get back to that. I always enjoy having my hands making something.
Yeah.
We have a couple consultants, certified Passive House consultants in the firm.
Yeah.
But we normally hire a sustainability consultant to do the modeling, to do the paperwork.
Right.
We know what goes into that, so we aren't unaware of the efforts and the challenge of doing all that, and we know the fundamental strategies of how you achieve passive house.
So do you think that's a good approach for someone in your position to train so that you understand the process, but then use someone who's an expert in that?
I would be really reluctant to do a passive house project in my office without having one of those either tradespersons or consultants that's an actual CPHD or certified passive house consultant on the project.
Right.
Because then I have to be with them every moment of the project to make sure that they're getting the pieces in the right place and detailing things correctly.
Yeah.
But I want to have people grow and learn so that's an important.
This is a big project, 7 years in the making.
Yep.
Give us you got some other numbers off the top of your head, size.
So the project's 300,000 square feet.
Yeah.
26 stories, 277 apartments. The podium of it, the first 2 floors, is a mixed-use podium. There's a 28,000 square foot CUNY Hostos. CUNY is the City of New York community college. They're local organization, Hostos, is just a block north of the site. They have a student center that's going into this facility that's going to help with students that either need help with their, guiding them through the educational process, or students that want to fast track through the process.
Yep.
So it's a great support program for the CUNY students. That's going into the building. That's also part of the Passive House envelope.
Yep.
And all the equipment and all the cooling and heating is all meeting those metrics. There's we did the blower door test, the whole building blower door test at the end of the job. It's supposed to get 0.8 CF. I'm not going to get the units correct, but we did 50% of that. We fully did half of the required air tightness. So it was like a really high, twice as tight. Exactly. Yeah. That's a better way to say it.
Half the infiltration.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
That's a good result.
And that's of the 1,000 people that the contractor really achieved that. And it wasn't just the GC, it was the window manufacturer, it was the mason, it was all the people that built that envelope.
Was it their first passive house?
No. They had done a project a couple of years earlier on the Roosevelt Island Cornell Tech campus in New York City. And they had really learned a lot of lessons on that site that they brought to our project and really helped us focus on doing certain things, not doing certain things. So that was a really helpful part of the process.
Who made the decision to do a single blower door test on the whole envelope, on the whole building, or to make
that's a requirement of achieving Passive House, of getting certification. We actually, the project just got certified officially, the Phius Plus 2018 certification that came in a couple days ago. So
and that was announced today, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Were there tests done during construction?
That's a very good question.
And zone tests?
We did something called a guarded blower door test.
Uh-huh.
And I got to tell you, doing Passive House, it can be nerve-wracking, especially when you know that you have to achieve that air tightness.
I think that's why they make the door red, because it's scary.
Maybe. But I got to say, if you get the wrong contractor and they don't do the details right, you don't find out until it's potentially too late. If you wait until all the sheetrock is up, all the exterior material is up, and then you do your blower door test, you can't get to that air barrier anymore. So
and the plumber's already gone to the next job.
Exactly. Yeah. So we did a couple things. We did a window test, just on the window, on the assembly, because that's kind of the weak point, where the tapes, where the sealants, where the clips, where the sashes, where all that stuff comes together. That's kind of the most complicated piece. It's where you've got all these different trades: the mason, the window installer, the caulker, sometimes the envelope, whoever's doing the envelope. So you've got all that stuff coming together. So we did a test on just that piece of the envelope to verify that we were getting good performance there, good air tightness.
Yeah.
Then we did this guarded blower door test, which you kind of have to wait till you're some way up through the building.
Yeah.
You can't do it at the base of the building because the ground floor is always open during construction.
Yep.
The second floor is usually compromised because it's so close to that ground floor. So third, fourth, maybe fifth floor is kind of the best place to do that.
Right.
And your timing of that is really important too. You've got to make sure you've got the components up that make up that air barrier. And only then can you test it. And what you usually have to do is like tape off certain parts of the building. You're kind of like trying to replicate what the end product might look like. But that's a really important metric or a really important milestone for a project, because then you can go to the window installer or the caulker or the mason and say, you know what, the way you have to do the rest of this building, you need to address this, this, and this.
Yeah, so you don't want to leave it too late.
No, you can't. You can't, or you're not going to achieve it.
Getting the system sorted out.
Yeah.
So great result. So all finished now?
All finished out. They're leasing up. There's a number of people that have come in. There was, and I hate to mention this, but it does speak to how important this project is. A couple months ago, there was a fire in a building in the Bronx, and 17 people lost their lives. A lot of people were displaced. Those displaced families are coming into this new project. Out of this tragedy, there's this at least a little glimmer of good news and hope that we have this building ready for them to come into.
Yeah.
So it's really gratifying to see that one-for-one benefit.
Immediate impact.
Yeah.
You mentioned a big theme of your presentation, both of you this morning, was about the cost benefit and sort of making the case, but also the journey of where we've come from. You talked about, I think it was a really great question you finished with, was to say, what have we done in the last 20 years? It certainly made me stop and pause and think about what I've been up to in the last 20 years.
Yeah. Do you want to tell me, or do you?
Well, so many, so much has happened since then. And you said that, it was 9/11 was 20 years ago. The world is such a different place.
Yeah.
And that can be quite daunting to think that far ahead. What do you see for your firm in the next 5 years?
Next 5 years. I think we want to continue doing what we're doing, looking for opportunities where it makes a lot of sense. There's a couple projects right now. I'm not going to say them in case any of my clients are listening, but I'm waiting for that prime moment to leap on them and say, you know what? Because of the density of this project, because of this, the noise, the airborne noise from this roadway or this train line, it makes a lot of sense to do Passive House here, and we should do it here. So I want to look for those opportunities. I want to continue educating not only my staff, my clients, and the design community.
Yeah.
I think the more people know about how achievable this is, the better. Which is one of the reasons why I come to these conferences and take the time to make these presentations. I mean, it's great to get all the attention and get all the compliments, but I also see that this is part of this community's job is to help educate practitioners and give people the confidence that they can do this too.
Yeah. Are you a Passive House firm now?
We have, I think, half a dozen people who are Passive House certified. But we have 112 people in the firm. And not everyone's
and you're
doing.
Still building subways and.
And it's hard to make a subway a Passive House. Too much air infiltration.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hey, well, thank you for your time.
Sure.
Really appreciate it, and it is inspiring hearing those stories, and I think it is worthy of being proud and showcasing what you've achieved. But I also think it does serve that bigger purpose of helping to educate others, but also inspire others.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, great.
Awesome.